I'm not gonna be able to start the meeting, just so you know.
Can we move over so you can
All
see?
right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the,
It's
We got a
very-
problem. Oh, shoot.
You said good
it's all a
morning.
matter of perspective. It's still morning on the west coast, maybe. There we go, afternoon anyway. All right, good morning to this evening's meeting, Technology, Finance, and Operations Subcommittee. It's January 20th, it's 5 p.m. In attendance today, we have Michelle, are you here? Yes. Sean is here, I'm here.
Aye, here.
Okay, and of course acknowledging representatives from both Hamden and Wilbraham. We're ecstatic to have you here. All right, Michelle, why don't you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Doug. Everybody okay if we start with operations budget?
We do debt first?
You want to do debt first?
Yeah, let's take like a second.
Okay,
That's why.
all right.
At least, malleable a little bit. So, in the packet materials I sent you for the operating, it's actually operating and debt budget on page 9. It has the actual 2 lines related to our long-term debt. Just calling it out separately because we actually articulate those different pieces of debt, operating and capital when we do assessments. But in the budget there on that page, which I put on the screen up there, the principal's going up about $60,000. The interest charges are going to go down about $50,000, a little more than $50,000. So it's a net increase of about half a percentage point from the current year. So that's all fixed by virtue of the 3 different bonds that we have currently, and those are a prescribed repayment schedule over the next several years. So I'll pause there and see if anybody has any questions about that. There's really not a lot of wiggle relative to that. So now moving to operating. What I have up here is actually the Excel version of what you have in your packet. The front page just summarizes what's in the details that follow. Not a tremendous amount has changed in the bottom line. A number of things have changed throughout the document over the ensuing weeks. A few things I'll point out relative to what has changed. One of the things that has changed, we received our formal assessment of retirement charges for Hamden County retirement, which is all our clerical, custodial, educator, etc. staff, non-teaching staff, non-MTRS staff. They pay into the Hamden County retirement system. They, at the end of the calendar year, project what the needs are to fund the retirement system, and that's a combination of current demand plus additional monies to sort of build up the balance in order to be fully funded. It's not quite fully funded yet, and I think it's 2030 or later now that will be fully funded, and we'll see a change in that. But I had been projecting a higher increase than what came to be the case. Our assessment only went up about 2.4%. Last year it went up just shy of 13, so that was very good news. Amazing, that's great.
So that helped by a good chunk. That's most of what you're seeing as far as the reduction from the last time. As far as the the total budget before offsets is down a little bit. Most of it is that. There have been a number of things that have moved. As I've gone through kind of line by line in the budget and gone through and found things that we don't need to fund, other things we need to fund at a higher level just because of the nature and trend of our spending and demand and needs. So trying to go through the full budget that way and get to numbers.
Doug, can I just ask you?
Yes, please.
Do you pay your county retirement assessment early to get that discount?
We do.
So you capture that savings of,
2%.
yeah, it looks like it's about 40, a little over 40,000 this year if you,
Yeah, we cut the check at the end of July, so as to say that 2%, we're in a fortunate position cash flow wise, that we can do that, and we do. Because it's a considerable savings, so we do
yeah,
do that.
the town does the same, assuming we have a cash down a day early.
Yeah, yeah, we're in a fortunate position that we can do that. So we do that. Any other opportunities like that, we try to take advantage of whenever we can. That's one that's notable for sure.
Doug, one quick one. So we get a 2.4% increase this year.
Yep.
What are they saying about next year?
They don't say anything about the following year. 2.4 is for July 1 of, fiscal
Yeah,
27,
that's what I'm getting.
but they don't forecast in the future. And the reason for that is it's sort of, the retirement assessment is very much like OPEB, so it's based on who you have currently employed, and they're projecting them out to be retirees. The current retirees we have on the books now, they're doing actuarials, about how long people are going to live and what the benefit's going to be, and the state of their funds. So, generally speaking, it was a pretty good year for investment. You have to invest fairly conservatively in retirement funds, so they don't do like the stock market, but they have some investment that way. My presumption is it performed pretty well, which is part of why ours went down, because that lowers the need for us to give them cash to put into the bank. I think the other thing that's hard to know is, we're one of many that pay into this system, and so it's also kind of like property tax. It depends on what happens to everybody else as far as their enrollment as well. So if everybody else lays off people and we don't lay off people, our percentage of the pie is bigger, so we end up having a larger increase. If, on the other hand, everybody's employment holds steady, then it's only, our increase matches the sort of overall increase to the system as a whole. So I think, it may have been that last year, because our employment held steady, a lot of different places laid off some folks, our percentage of the pie got larger, so we paid, whatever the increase was to just sort of meet the need, plus then we had a bigger piece of the pie. This year, I think, fewer people probably, changed their staffing structure, and then the performance of the investments probably did a little better, and so the impact on our assessment was much more modest, which was great news, quite frankly, because I put in originally, 6 or 8%, I forget what I had, a noticeable increase. So that's helpful news. The other things I'll point out, just to talk through just broadly about the topics here. One of the things you'll notice, and it's a little challenging, I've gone back and forth, and I do want a little feedback from the group about this, is that when you look at a number of, in the line by line in particular, as you go along, certain things will look very much higher than the year before, or the current year. And part of that's because what's showing in history, as well as the budget for fiscal 26 in that detail section, is with the offsets applied. So one of the things I was thinking of doing is in that line by line, any place where we typically apply offsets, we don't know how much just yet or where we'll exactly put them, we can articulate some of that and sort of show, it's like part of why this jumps up 10% or 15% is because we normally apply some either grant funds or some revolving funds, that type of thing. So a good example of that, if you look in health insurance, we are projecting a pretty high percentage increase, but additionally, that's where we apply our school choice revenues to reduce that. Well, that's $850,000 that's taken out of one version, but out of the fiscal 26, but it's not taken out of the fiscal 27 yet. So if we highlight that and make a note, that one's a pretty straightforward one. That'll be a pretty direct one-to-one, but when we start getting into things like Title I or Circuit Breaker or some of our grant funds or our revolving fund for our early childhood program, from our tuitions, we can pay for some of the cost of the teachers. Those kind of things, those have a lot more variability about where we ultimately end up applying them. But they do have, in some cases, a very material effect on what you're seeing. So sometimes if you're looking at those and thinking that sort of trend lines, you'll have this sort of jump for fiscal 27. I was thinking about marking those to just identify, that some of that is an artifact of expected increases, but some of it's, because we have not yet applied some of the offsets that we have. And it will dampen those in the end when we finish.
Of course, where you apply them doesn't change the total amount of money that we get for circuit breaker.
Right. It's
which will come off the total assessment, which
right.
will come off the total numbers that each of the towns
Right.
will see.
Right.
But I understand what you're saying in terms of looking at the flow sheet, it'd be,
That's just a question.
Sure.
So right now the need is around 4 million, right? So are you saying that just with school of choice, that goes down to 3.2 million, once you apply it?
It goes down to, well, it's at about 4.4.
So when you say it's not applied, does that mean that what we're looking at here is $850,000 over stated as a need?
So in the details, that line, in particular for insurance, we'll subtract 850,000. That's the most straightforward one. But there are several other places throughout where it's a little more nuanced because we haven't figured out.
Right,
exactly.
so.
I think he's looking at this number that you have down here, Doug.
We'll look
So
at-
he's looking at what is the increase in assessments to town?
That
from
does
last
include
year?
all the offsets.
It does?
It does.
Okay, so I was looking up way up here on the top.
Right, so that's before we've applied the offsets. If you get to the sort of middle of the page here, this one here is, it's 4.246, is after offsets. And so why does that seem so high? It's because our offsets only went up 3%, but our overall budget went up 7.1, 7.2%. So that's part of why that is still so large. And we apply our different revenue sources, and again, when you see things like, our E&D, we're proposing, 700,000 instead of 1.19. Our estimate for Chapter 70 is only going up, less than 4%. If the overall budget's going up 7 and our revenue sources are going up 3, then the rest of that burden falls on your assessment, which is part of why your assessments are in that 9-10% range right now. Governor's budget is going to come out. I think it's this week, maybe next week. I think officially next week, but I think she did a press release that it might be coming out towards the end of this week. That'll give us some clearer indication of where Chapter 70 is going to go.
Where are you in terms of, like, what, in this budget, what amount of contribution from Chapter 70 are you carrying on with the numbers that they're seeing right now?
So I put in for $100 per student. So last year, the governor's proposed budget was at 75. I think we ended up at 150 is what the legislature voted. And
Right.
So I picked 100 as a starting point, because I think the message was clear even to the governor that, something has to be done for hold harmless districts like ourselves. So that's why I've estimated 100 for the number. I'm hopeful that, she'll start there, or maybe higher would be great news, but we'll see.
So if they get, let's say they go with last year's, 150 a student,
Mm-hmm.
how much more money does that turn into towards the budget?
Sure. Do I know that number off the top of my head?
Not that much.
Well, I mean,
It's not,
$50 times-
it's like 40 or 50,000
Yeah.
is the kind of difference there.
50,000.
But,
Okay.
every little bit helps. I've estimated insurance at like 13%. It comes in, each percentage point's roughly a little shy of $70,000. So if it comes in at 10 instead of 13, there's, $210,000.
When are we gonna know the insurance number?
We're meeting February 3rd, and we'll set the rates.
Okay.
So,
When you say we, is that Scantic Valley?
yeah, Scanning Valley will set the rates. And so the circumstance for Scanning Valley is the following. It's a trust that holds the resources for the members, and they, purchase services through Blue Cross and her program, that sort of thing. But we hold all our own money, so we collect all the premiums, pay all the charges. There's a certain amount of base level target balance that we want to have. We've been well above that over the last several years. So 2 years ago, not the current year, previous year, we went with a 0% increase in an attempt to sort of lower that balance, because, if you're sitting on that cash, it's not doing anybody any good. People paid into it, we're not sort of getting a benefit from it, so.
It's members cash.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of, you don't want to hold it too long. You want to be financially viable, but not sit on it for too long.
It's their equivalent of free cash.
Right, exactly. exactly. So this year we went with a 4% increase, again, in an attempt to sort of spin down some of that balance. The projected increase in insurance, absent of that, would have been around 12 or 13. What we're seeing in the early part of the year with the meetings we've had and where sort of expenses versus income has been, is it's actually spending down the balance. So our ability to support the premiums will be more limited, perhaps. This is part of why we have consultants that help us sort of
So this is
read
just
tea
like,
leaves.
last year, we put a lot of money from E&D towards the assessment budget, but E&D is just a bank account. It's not something that recurs in terms of revenue every year. So-
Right. That's
So they're spending from their E&D or
Right.
free cash
Right.
to temporarily lower the assessments, but the assessments are gonna have to go up that amount of money at some point,
Right.
right?
I think the
Like,
idea
so
is
we're
to try to
looking at
taper
higher
along.
increased numbers here because of how much E&D we put towards the budget last year, which I'm not saying was a bad thing. We had the money, it was good to spend
Yeah.
it, but it's not a recurring thing
It's
that's
not a
available.
recurring revenue,
And we
that's
had
right.
less E&D this year because, we spent it, which is fine, but
Right.
it's
You could argue it is a bad thing, right?
Huh?
So you could make an argument it is a bad thing because you're taking it and you're funding operational budgets with, the ideal thing is you're using that and you're pushing it to like Minichog Stabilization Fund, and then there are fewer capital needs based off of. So I think we've got a little bit of an addiction to using E&D to fund the operational budget, and I would encourage us to take a really hard look at, would we be better served taking that $700,000, moving it to Minichog Regional Stabilization Fund, and then paying for some of the things you have that are capital needs?
or at least directly applying it towards known capital requests for the regional school district. That was a thought I had last year. I'm glad you're saying it, because last year I felt like it wasn't warmly received. But it's just a different way of thinking for our school district. But this is the same thing that worries me, because assessments, come from revenue, and so when you're using free cash kind of supplies to help support the assessments, then eventually you get to a hole that's awful, can be awful. And-
Can I direct our attention to page 8?
All right.
Sorry. I'm here. That's insurance. This is something that we wanted some feedback on, because when we met last time, just talking about the cover sheet, there was some discussion about calling out insurance as like a separate line from the district-wide. And so you'll see there's lots of different insurance line items. And so I think we just wanted to talk a little bit about that and what, if anything, you'd want to see called out separately from district-wide support. So Doug, with that in mind, it's the feedback we're looking for. Doug, could you just take us through the insurance line items?
Yeah, so if you look at these, if you look at account numbers, I'll give you so 1010 in these account numbers, just to orient you to the account numbers that are on here. 1010 just means general fund, right? So the next block is the sort of broad categories of expense that we have. And I think the term the state uses for their accounting system is fixed costs, or is the 5,000 series. So all our insurances and things that fall into that category of insurance benefits for employees, that kind of thing, are all in this 5,000 series. So it's got separation costs if people leave, and there's contract language around some of that. But mostly it's various kinds of insurance, unemployment, workers' comp, Medicare, retiree insurance, health insurance. We also have in the section here of non-employee insurance is things like, liability insurance and professional liability bonding for staff to handle cash, which is a really small number. Other kinds of insurance, cybersecurity insurance, et cetera, et cetera. The totality of all of those insurances, and again, this is before we apply, $850,000 worth of school choice to reduce our health insurance.
is, I'll tell you exactly what it is, it's 11 million. I put it right here, $11,744,780 is all those insurances kind of combined. So, you know, as compared to the 18,414,596 for other things that are district-wide. And if you take the 850 for school choice out of that, it's just, just a little under 11 million, and then change, 10.8 or 9. So, you know, so how to represent that if you want to sort of separate out that kind of cost. If you think about in terms of a regional school budget, which has to hold a lot of things like retirement incentives and retirement and insurances and things like that, compared to like town budgets where, you know, your DPW department budget doesn't have all those things. They're centralized. It's in your general government one, but it's sort of, everybody's all lumped together there. You know, it sort of is a way to sort of draw out, all right, well, what are the things that are similar to, you know, other departments in the town like DPW, fire, police, et cetera. Not that they're great comparators, but at the same time, it is, you know, a cost that we hold as a separate financial entity. And it's a, you know, it's a significant number. So if you've got thoughts about how to represent that well for both, you know, your own purposes, but also as people ask the questions like, well, why are schools going up 7%? Everybody else is going up 2%, and you know, that kind of thing. You're like, well, wait a minute. There's, you know, 1/6 of it is you know, insurance, you know, that are all sitting in our general government. So like your general government in both towns is probably sitting at 5-6% relative, you know, guessing, but at a much higher percentage than the rest of your departmental budgets.
1/6 of the whole budget, but if I'm understanding this right, it's about 25% of the projected increase at this point, right? You got 1.4 million for personnel insurance. You had to subtract out 850,000 for that. And you've got an increase of almost 400,000 for retiree insurance.
Right.
So, to me, that's about 1.1 million.
Yeah.
And you're projecting 4.2 million
Yeah.
increase, so a quarter of it is the insurance.
Right. Right. It's a huge driver of what's happening to the bottom line, for sure. And you know, as you know, in the municipalities, you know, it's a people business, so you know, when you consider salaries and benefits, that's fully 75% of our total dollar spend. Sometimes higher, but you know, in that order. So when things that impact that go up a lot, they have a pretty significant, profound impact on our overall bottom line, for sure. You know, the challenging thing is that, you know, the supports we have, whether it be grants, you know, offset type things here, and you know, other revenues, you know, are either kind of holding steady or are, you know, not keeping pace generally with the overall, you know, inflationary pressures. A couple of things I'll note real quick, talking about other sources. One thing that's been on here, and I was, you know, sort of fully realizing this, I've been having a conversation with the athletic director a little bit about this, but about, you know, we collect fees for athletics. We use that to offset some of the costs of athletics. But when we present the budget, and it really didn't fully hit me more until, you know, I was looking at this one more time today, and I was like, well, wait a minute. We had a line in this offsets that said athletics, you know, athletic revolving, and it says eliminated in fiscal 25, and we really shouldn't, because it overstates what we're really expecting of our general fund without putting in at least something for the revenue that we're going to generate from those fees from kids. The way I would think about it is like, there's certain, if we're going to offer an athletics program, we're going to have an athletic director, an athletic trainer, and a clerical person to support that. That's, you know, a cost we should probably have in just our general operating fund. All the things that are dependent on how many kids participate, which is, you know, how many coaches you need, what are the officials, all that sort of stuff, that's what you want to try to support with your, you know, with your revenues from, you know, participation fees, gate revenues, whatever other sources we have. And so, you know, I looked it up today. Our over the last couple of years, you know, can comfortably estimate the revenue from athletics at around 135. It's been interesting how it's a little variable, so that may be the timing of when it sort of gets booked into the accounting system. So that'll improve this. If we book, you know, some of the revenues from athletics, or most of the revenues from athletics, you know, that'll reduce, you know, the totality here by, you know, 135,000. So that's going to be good news. I'll try to pull that in before Thursday's meeting with the school committee, but.
Where is that currently
So currently,
going? Like, where is it? It's just.
well, you know, in the broadest terms, it ends up E&D, but, you know, it's,
Okay.
it's unbudgeted revenue.
Is that the fund you paid for the Kubota from last year?
No, well, the Kubota is from when we charge rental fees. So like when other people come in and use our facility, we charge rent for the space. We have some of that as a resource. And when we talk about capital, there's a few places where we kind of started to leverage some of those funds for that purpose. So that's how we pay for that Kubota. And there are, like, you know, on the capital fund, and I think there'll be some more, because, you know, continuing conversations, we may highlight a couple more things where we'll reduce the ask of the communities, because we've got those fees, and, you know, they're part of the need for, that we have is, you know, directly, you know, related to the rentals that we do.
So you apply that, so we will expect that'll be money not in E&D for next year.
That's right, that's right.
So
and-
whatever E&D would end up being, it'll be
Right.
130, 140 less.
Right.
than
So-
that.
Which is, it was a little, I don't want to say disingenuous, but it was a little
John wants to say something.
Nope.
unclear to not
Got his hand up.
express that he had it in there, but anyway, I'll stop.
Just,
Yes.
I'm sorry, before we get too far into other topics, I just wanted to circle back to what your guidance is on how you want to represent that insurance. Like, do you want to have that roughly $11 million separated out from the district-wide support as its own line, or keep it included within district-wide support?
I don't know what you guys think. I mean, it's such a big expense, and it's such a big driver of the increase in the school budget. It's probably good for it to be on a separate line, because, I mean, the first thing people say when you say the budget went up is, why did it go up? Right, and so that's
Yeah,
a
that would
perfect
be,
example of one of the things we don't have control over,
is that
that drives an increase.
gonna be difficult for you to do, or?
No.
Because that really would be good if we could have that on its own line. Michelle, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's no more difficult than when we pull out transportation, which we pull into its own line as well. So it's a similar kind of thing. It's not terribly difficult to do there. So I'm happy to sort of draw that. Athletics similarly is to draw out for a particular purpose. So if you want to pull the insurances, I mean, it'll be more than just the word insurance, but I'll phrase it such that it's fairly clear what it is. Sort of I mean, they're not, it's a school cost, but it's not something that makes school happen, other than the fact that it keeps people employed and supports them, our employees. But, you know, it's not like buying textbooks or that kind of thing.
So on the athletic piece, because you brought it up, a couple
Yep.
questions. Why do we assume we need all the positions that you referenced? You said if we're going to run an athletics department, we need boom, boom, and boom. So if we're talking insurance, which is one of the most, people in buildings, most expensive things,
Right.
part of the way you reduce your insurance costs, you reduce the number of people doing something.
Right.
So why do we need all of those positions to run an athletic department? Or why do we assume we need them?
Well, so the only three I would suggest would be, general fund would be the athletic director,
Mhm.
the clerical support of that position.
Why do we assume we need clerical support for that position?
Well, it's, you know, the nature of you know, the work that's done with regard to managing the staff, so there's a tremendous turnover in the number of, you know, coaches, make sure those things get posted, schedule changes, buses, you know, they're supporting the athletic director in day-to-day operational tasks of
making sure the buses, their cancellations, helping with rescheduling, all of those administrative tasks, that when the athletic director can't. So the athletic director is dealing more with larger issues, if there are.
I guess that's not my question. Why do we assume that burden can't be spread over X amount of other individuals? So if you look at the salary is not massive. However, when you have the salary plus insurance, is there the ability to take those responsibilities and have those responsibilities divided now amongst, I don't know how many clerical people are in the building, amongst the number of folks that can do that? So that way you've reduced one person that you're paying insurance for, and then as you continue to go through, you look at all the areas to say, how do we ensure that every person is fully absorbed, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, I think that, the staffing levels we have for administrative staff, whether it be clerical support at the high school or any other place, we run pretty lean with regard to that. So I'm not sure that there's, time in people's schedules to take on additional tasks, which is what we're required to do that.
So then the next question, why do we have a $20,000 increase for athletic trainer from FY '24 to '25, right? Historically, we sat below in the 30s. Also, we jumped to 56,847 for an FY '25 actual. Now in our FY '27 budget, we're at 60,000. So yes, it's only a 3.4% increase year over year. However, it's effectively doubled where we were just 2 years ago.
Right. So that's the application of an offset. So that's a perfect example of another example where the fiscal 27 is not demonstrating the fact that the fiscal 27 is showing the full salary. The previous years are showing after athletic fees have been applied. So we've applied athletic fees across multiple dimensions in the athletics lines.
Did we not do that in '25? Right, so that's where you see the biggest jump.
We may not have done it yet.
$20,000 increase in '25.
Yeah, so we may not have applied it in 25, or we may not have been able to apply as much in 25. That's, some of the decisions are ones that we make depending on the revenues.
Does that have to do with that there was an increase in the salary, I believe?
Some of that,
Could be.
some of that is there, but also the offset, I think, is the most important.
That's a massive
This
increase
is,
in salary, if that's a.
no, it wasn't 20.
Okay.
That's not-
Right.
What I think is important is sort of like a caveat for this whole budget presentation is what Doug has already said, but I want to sort of emphasize is that the offsets are not applied to the 27 budget in these line items yet. They're showing on the front page because they're in the second table where all the offsets will come off. But what will happen is this, what is it? I want to say $3.8 million worth of offsets will be applied to different line items throughout the budget in FY '27 to reduce that. So this is an area where that comes up. Another area we've already talked where that comes up is the insurance. Because 850 isn't showing it. The other place it shows up a lot is within the special education paraprofessionals. We typically use the IDEA funding. If you look back on the first page, see IDEA grant in that sort of middle of the second table. That is $875,000 that'll get applied to those paraprofessional positions. So when you see some things that look like aberrations, it's because the offset hasn't been applied yet. Now, there is some contingency for contract negotiations, but the big piece is that you're missing from that representation $875,000.
So we're moving, we've had discussion last year, we're gonna have more discussion this year, especially with regard to what we do with dispatch, but we're gonna move to an area where we're gonna show the full line, and then the next line down will be what we're giving as your assessment lines. That way, when people look at it like Patrick just did, the real number is $70,000. You can add $10,000 this year, $20,000 next year, whatever, but the real number for payroll is whatever the number is in 2027, and I don't want to say what it is because I forgot it. So we're going to go to an offset as the line down, and we've been approved by the state to do that. So we already asked the lawyers, is that okay?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like a revenue line underneath like an offset of revenue line underneath an expense line.
Yeah, it's one of those things in doing budgets over a number of years that I've struggled on how best to represent, because
you know, in this district, for example, school choice gets applied in totality to health insurance. That's a simple way to do it. You know, I had in my former district, we applied school choice to mathematics salaries. And so you look at the math department and you go, why is it so much less expensive to run the math department? It really wasn't. It was just that we had this big chunk of school choice. And so it's like, well, how do we, and I had an ongoing conversation about, well, how to represent this that shows that there's, you know, this offset, you know, if we know it. And I think the challenge in doing that is not to not put those in. I mean, I've gone back and forth about that myself, about how to sort of demonstrate that, is in some cases it's very straightforward, school choice being one, we've got a fairly straightforward way to do that. But some of the other ones, like the IDEA grant, where it's going to get distributed across multiple schools and multiple, you know, places, it gets a little more challenging to sort of pick a number that seems real to people at the same time, you know.
That's right. No, honestly, the way I like this better, because you may have applied $20,000 to the trainer this year, but if your grant that you used went down by 50%, you can't apply $20,000 next year. Now you look like you have a $10,000 increase.
Right.
So if it was a line down, no, the trainer's making the same amount of money, everybody.
Right.
But our grant money came down. That's why it just seems cleaner.
Yeah.
And we're getting into that with dispatch, because dispatch has a lot of grants that offset. We're getting to that point with dispatch where, you know, with 3 communities and possibly 4, we have to look at the way that we're doing it.
Right.
And reporting it, because it's, if you looked at it, we have $1.2 million in labor.
Right.
But if you look at the budget, it says 250,000 or 300,000.
Right.
Because we put the offsets in it, and it's just not right.
Right. And it's how to represent those circumstances clearly. You know, it's like, here's the totality of cost, which is sort of what we're showing now, because we haven't applied, you know, any offsets in any place. And how to represent that and not completely confuse the whole situation, you know. An option 2 would be to, you know, to put in an offsets column where we put, you know, a dollar amount and the, you know, residual sort of, here's what's left, you know, kind of thing. I've gone back and forth. I mean, I think the challenge at this stage is sort of, you know, how to distribute some of those that aren't sort of as straightforward as far as where they go.
And then the first year is going to be a shock, right?
Right.
It's a bigger shock to the first year, especially on insurance. If you're not going to play $850,000, and that one's going to go
Right.
with your other chapter money that should be at the bottom, saying these are offsets. That way you can track your offsets as to whether or not they're increasing or decreasing compared to the expense.
Right.
But it's going to be a shock. But at least if it's explained right.
Right. Right.
Other question. Buses.
Yep.
Do we?
Is this athletic related?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No. I want, if you were jumping to regular buses, I want to finish athletics. I got 2
No.
other things, keep going.
Okay, no.
This is one of them, so keep going.
Okay, so it's my understanding we went to coach buses most primarily, and not the yellow buses.
No, just greater than 100 miles.
I think there's certain circumstances where they'll do coach, usually for longer trips that are typically we do the longer trips when we're in like the playoffs. You know, that kind of circumstance where we go a longer trip. But on a day-to-day basis, just for the Tuesday game with West Springfield.
Actually, how much more expensive is that? And how much of a difference is it to the budget? Are we talking negligible, or are we talking?
It's noticeable. Shoot. Should have known that question was coming because I haven't looked it up.
I'll send it in.
Yeah, I've seen the number, I can't recall, but it's a noticeable difference, especially when you consider like the totality of the season kind of thing. The other thing that's challenging just around transportation for athletics is there's, you know, if we are able to use Lower Pioneer Valley, you know, Educational Collaborative to do it, it's much less expensive than even if we contract a regular old yellow school bus with one of the other vendors that we can sometimes do that. You know, they are currently not staffed to the level that you're working on, you know, trying to get more certified drivers, but they're not
Can you
here
tell
yet.
Mark he needs to do more overtime?
He's had a cold.
He's not a cold yet.
And it's a man cold. I verified it went by. Might have been the same man cold I had the week before.
But it's a huge difference even between what, you know, Lower Pioneer Valley charges us versus what, you know, a third-party vendor does.
even regular school buses. It's just, they're a little bit more expensive. And partly because it's an on-demand thing, and you know, if we can, you know, reach out, like, for the spring season, we'll know that we'll have, you know, we're gonna continue to anticipate we don't have those couple of buses that we thought we might have this year for athletic transportation. So, you know, we can be more proactive in trying to get a better price from the vendors.
When you say a couple hundred miles, is it, you're talking round trip, or what school do we go to that's 100 miles away?
Yes, ma'am.
This year, Barnstable,
Yeah.
Hingham, Duxbury, and I think that's it. I've got it, so I've got a freedom of information.
When the state reorganized how the competitive athletics play against each other, because, right, they were complaining that it was too easy for Western Mass schools to get into the playoffs because we only played each other, which wasn't the case, because we still get into the playoffs plenty frequently now, but now they have to travel all over the state.
So to put it in perspective, last year, the athletic transportation expenditure was $76,733. The transportation for the bus to Duxbury in November 2025 for girls soccer was $1,395. So if you start adding it up, and I have the total, sorry, it's pretty substantial. So transportation cost for Minichog football travel to Barnstable game in September 2025, $2,000. Transportation cost for Minichog football travel for Hingham game November 2025, $3,450. 2 bus. Transportation cost for Minichog field hockey to Hingham game November 2025, $1,225. 1 bus. So if you look at it, you add that quickly up, you're talking about more than 10% of the total expenditures last year are being spent on 4 games. So this is one of the ones I wanted to bring up, and I'll use Sean's alma mater. I think it was 1996 that Boston College was invited to the Aloha Bowl, and they turned down the invitation because they did the math and realized that the cost to travel to Hawaii and what they were being paid did not make sense. So when we look at these numbers, that doesn't work for the taxpayer, right? So when we look at senior trips at the senior center, they have a fee that they charge, for example, to go to Great Barrington, and I think they had 2 trips that I saw. I want to say it was like $125 for one and $75 for the other. And I know the boosters are paying some portion of that. Would share, many other communities will not charge the taxpayer. If the team wants to take something other than a yellow bus, boosters or the parents pay for it. I don't understand why we're accepting invitations in some cases when our record is far below 500. So does it really make sense to travel 240 plus miles at that cost to the taxpayer for, I'm not going to pretend to understand the math that the MIA uses, because it used to be pretty simple, 500 or above, and now with the strength of schedule and all this stuff, it's really screwy. But we do have to ask the question, is that really responsible to the taxpayer that they're picking up the burden of 10% of the total transportation costs in a handful of games?
I think I know your answer to that.
I would have an opinion,
choice?
but it comes right.
This reminds me
to
of,
opt in and out of games.
well, this reminds me of the student parking lot and the cost of maintaining it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's the same type of an issue.
Well, that's not, I don't think that's fair to the kids to tell them they have to forfeit the game because it's too far away, but
When you
do
win
we
a
have
game,
any,
and then we pay $1,000 to $1,200 for a team that won 1 game to travel that
It's
far?
for the playoffs.
That's
not for
pretty
a game,
extreme.
Not for a regular game, it's for playoffs.
So I go back to BC football saying it's not worth it. So something's got to give. Either it's a conversation with the MIAA to say, hey, when we look at it, so a greater amount of the gate fee from the state tournament needs to go to offset teams that are traveling greater than, say, 100 miles, or something else, because the way this works, that's completely unreasonable to do to a taxpayer.
This happened to my son at his school. They were invited to the national championships for squash. And he loved it, but the team had like a 2-12 record, and the team just said, we're not going to Washington DC and spending money on a bus and spending all that just to, just not doing it. So it's a choice. You had another one on that point?
So this is a great example. So I'm referencing Mass football stats, the impact of statewide playoffs. Longest travel distance in week 1 of the playoff. Nantucket at Pentucket, 140 miles. South Hadley at Amesbury, 120 miles. Blackstone Millville at Hoosick Valley, 120 miles.
Kip Academy at Frontier, 109 miles, Doherty at Barnstable, 107 miles, Minnetonka at Hingham, 102 miles, Mashpee at Clinton, 100 miles, right? So this is not just a Western Mass issue. This is teams from the east having to travel this far. Understand why the state did it, however, I would encourage us to take a hard look on whether we're gonna accept or push the MIA really hard to say you need to start making reimbursements because of the amount of purse that they make off these. It is just unreasonable to say that that's now going away from education overall. So,
If
something to think about.
If I can make a suggestion on this, I know that athletics is on the agenda for Thursday's school committee meeting. This is something that, you know, the committee could discuss, and if so, give direction to me and Doug, or Steve around that.
I think that's a good suggestion, and the athletics department can prepare. I'm sure that they'll want to have an argument to advocate. I mean, I completely understand the argument you make, and financially it's a very reasonable argument, but, I mean, you know, the kids work hard at practice, and they put a lot into it, and sometimes they have a team that wins a lot, and sometimes they have a team that wins not a lot, but that's not because they put in less effort, you know, and I guess it sits uneasy with me that we may be in the position of starting to tell some kids, I'm sorry, the game the MIA told you to go to was more than 100 miles away, so we're gonna forfeit. You know.
They can elect to pay.
Huh?
They can
Come
elect
up
to
with a way to pay it, so the
Yeah.
taxpayer are even paying
No,
over $12,000
and I
for
completely
transportation.
understand it, I
That's
can't
the-
argue with your financial argument. But once again, it's a public school system, say, okay, the kids on the team have to come up with the money for the bus, or, you know, but now, once again, we're like, you know, it's, well, not everyone is of the means, right? Although, you know what I mean, there's gonna be, you know, okay,
So free and
you know,
reduced, it follows the same.
three kids aren't of very, very good means, and so they're not gonna go to the game, because they can't buy the bus fee, so
No,
it,
they would be covered by it, right? So if you, the way you look at it is you'd say, okay, who would receive, and I know free and reduced lunch isn't the right term anymore, but who would receive that, and that's the way you look at it. The bottom line is just, I think you gotta take a really hard look at it, whether it's declining, whether it's saying MIA, you need to pay our way for those that are traveling over, say, 100 miles, or if it's to say boosters and parents, it needs to be funded, or hop in the old yellow school bus, and it may be uncomfortable, but guess what? That's significant, so it's about 50%. If you use the calculation that LPBEC uses, it's about 50% of what the total of that is, so it's a substantial difference there.
I think
I
the
don't
issue is
yeah, I don't
not
object
the
to the
yellow
yellow
school
bus.
bus, I think the issue is a bathroom. I think when you're going over 100 miles an hour, having a bathroom inside the bus is.
There's nothing
is the issue.
statutory that says you have to. That's, I
Yeah.
get it, but
When you
again,
have the kids for 100
There are
miles on a
teams that travel
bus.
on school buses further,
Pass out
and they
empty
can
water
stop
bottles,
at
I
our
mean,
stop.
no, I mean,
It's not
I
impossible.
mean, yeah, I mean, I don't see
Yeah.
you know, a regular school bus should be fine, and, you know, it's just, I mean, there's chaperones
If
on
I
the bus,
might,
right, if they
if-
have to, God forbid, make a stop at a rest stop.
I mean, I've been a supporter of athletics forever. Our kids all did athletics through the school, had a great experience with it. But this is a year that the town is gonna have to be sharpening the pencils. And we are gonna be making difficult choices this year. We're gonna be expecting the school to be making the difficult choices as well.
okay.
We can, there simply is not gonna be enough revenue to cover the anticipated increases on both the school side and the town side. So we are at that point where the choices are gonna have to be made, the priorities are gonna have to be listed. And there's gonna be some things that are gonna be either unfunded or funded at a lower level. This may be one of them. And this is
What
exactly
about-
what's gonna have to happen with what each of the different, categories of expenses that the schools have.
I would imagine, particularly at the playoff games, there's gonna be a lot of parents in attendance. Is it an option to go with self-transport for playoff games? And there's no cost for the bus. Seniors can drive, everybody gets a ride, and goes. I mean, if you're in rec, if you're in Falcon soccer, if you're, everybody gets to the game.
Caution you on football, hockey, caution you on the ones that have a lot of equipment.
Well, but
also
an
liability
equipment
questions,
van, a van with equipment in it is a lot less expensive than 2 or 3 school buses to go the distance, right?
I would say it's for you to solve. I'm just sharing from financial standpoint, I would think that you might run into some issues knowing what some of those numbers are. So I might, to John's point, talk Thursday, see if there's another, if there's a way you want to cover it.
The other thing I'm gonna say though is that's one of the areas, so transportation costs are, to my thinking, when you talk about fees that we're charging, this is one of those where a little bit of, rising tide lifts all boats, so where the system as a whole socializes some of those costs of transportation across the thing, and so your athletic fees are part of what's supporting, in particular, transportation to offset some of those. But it is one of those things where if that's not the case, if it's starting to become general fund revenues, then it's a much more difficult, conversation and need to place that as of a sufficient value.
So using your $135,000 in revenue generated between gate and fees, the transportation cost covers 50%, less than 50, or just, excuse me, more than 50%. So you add that quickly up to your coaches, you go, shoot, we're talking about them paying $230,000, $270,000 from the taxpayer. So I think that's just the one challenge. Where is the athletic transportation? Because it's not under athletic transportation. So where in the budget is it?
That's a good question. I see me scrolling here.
And as you're looking, this is probably more for the school committee than anybody, but it looks like it's a 3.6% year-over-year increase. I don't know when you're voting on athletic fees and student activity fees, but I would like to think that you would, at a minimum, have a 3.6% increase with athletic fees or student activity fees to ensure that any cost increase is effectively your fees match whatever the taxpayer is being asked to cover.
We usually vote on an increase in fees every year, right, Michelle?
We did,
Yeah, so,
we did last year.
we did last year. Although they usually come together with a proposal for us that's not a straight percent increase, but because it seems reasonable that some sports are appropriate to increase more than others.
Just had this conversation with the rec department. Why? Don't care.
No, I'm just saying what they do.
If everybody pays $5 more, one person doesn't have to pay $20 more. I don't understand that logic, but that's not for me.
Yeah.
To Doug's
Why
point
is
though,
it-
it may make
Yeah,
sense.
why is
I
120
know
and
typically
2?
that conversation
Everybody's
is
five.
occurred later in the year. It may make sense to have that conversation prior to budget so that you have the ability to sit in front of the town and say, the towns and say, hey, we've already done all the things that we can do to increase revenue, and this is really what's left. Okay.
If I may, in the interest of time, because it's fine.
Oh, my
In
goodness.
the interest of time, I understand that these are without the governor's budget, it's not without the state budget, it's not without the insurance, it's not without, I understand at the same time last year, by the way, happy anniversary.
Oh.
It's probably been a year and a week, right? So,
Yeah.
so because I remember having a conversation, you don't even know where your chair is, and we're trying to ask you for numbers. I firmly believe that these are getting better. To Doug's point, this is the year, we're with these numbers, we're at an override. With these numbers, Doug's probably at an override.
I don't want to say that publicly, but.
But you're close to the limit.
It's a concern.
It's close to, okay, so
Yes.
it's not an override, we're close to the limit. We'd have to cut other departments in order to get this done. So I think they're going to get better, which is very optimistic. But in my conversation that I had with you before this meeting, one of the things that I think we need to look at is, when we uncover every rock, is how not to affect teachers, and how to look under every rock that isn't a child facing, or isn't something that we can do systematically through synergies through towns. I think is the best way to do it. And I really want to look at, and the finance group tomorrow will be voting on asking the select board to have a conversation with the school board about taking over the facilities management of the schools. Our goal here is not to have anybody fired. It's not that they, from his conversation earlier, they run on the same non-teaching union, they're on the pensions. So it's not about firing anybody. It's about synergies. You have 2 or 3 HVAC people, we contract out HVAC people. You have Mike, which is now retiring, so we would then, just on him alone, we would then separate that with the two facilities managers, one in Hampton, one in Wilbraham, and just his salary alone with regards to insurance costs, with regards to payroll, with regards to pensions, with regards to all of that, that would go right back to your budget. It's a net sum for the towns, to be honest with you, but it's a way to find synergies and find savings that we can give back to the schools.
Wouldn't it be better to have it that the school district takes over the towns?
No, why do you want to do anything that isn't?
Takes over the facilities of the towns, the other way of doing it. Instead of we dividing up between the two towns, what if we already have the people and stuff like that, why don't we pull your resources in here, and then we can do our buildings and we can do the town's buildings?
Let's see what the select board says. And then
Right, no, but the politest way to say it is you're educators. You educate. We have townspeople, we have people that do building maintenance and do that kind of stuff, let us facilitate the building. The rude way to say it, they're the town's buildings, so let the town take care of the building. I know you're gonna say Minnetonka, right? But Minnetonka falls underneath our budget as our debt for each individual town. It falls under the debt interest, falls on each individual town budget. So we can figure it out. And I'm not, again, I talked about this last time, I don't wanna get in the weeds, we can figure out a ticket system as to how the towns, if it's, let's just say that budget is including I want janitorial services, because if the teachers, I hate to say it this way, but I said it earlier, if the teachers make the mess, then have the schools pick up the mess, right? So if the dirt is being compiled by the teachers and by the school systems, let them pick up. But everything else, if we can find out a way, if we knew what that budget looked like, what that number of people looked like, we could go back to, say, Sam, to Herb, we could go back to Parks and Rec, because maybe Parks and Rec takes over the maintenance of the fields. We could go back to the town, maybe the town now, you don't have to hire a third-party service to do your plowing, maybe now it goes into where we hire full-time people for our plowing, or there's gotta be synergies there that if we find 6 or 7, that could be, $600,000, $700,000, it's worth looking under the rock. And again, there's gonna be positions available, I don't want anybody to lose their job, I'm just saying, we just need to look at it and figure it out. It's something I think that needs to be looked at, and we're gonna be voting on it tomorrow.
I think it's a great suggestion.
Hey.
I think there's an opportunity for cost savings, and the towns could even get together and have a regional, service department, right? Where regionalized across both towns, and like Hampton might have somebody who's really good with HVACs, and Wilbraham might have someone really good with electrical, and sharing those resources could only, improve efficiency, decrease cost. I mean, but a lot does have to be figured out, right? If the towns don't come together with the regional department, well, then we have one regional building, and who knows, in the future, there might be more regional buildings.
And that's, hey, who's available, and if Hampton sends their guy, then we get 79% of the bill, and they get 21%, whatever it is. But there's easy ways to figure it. I mean, it's a hard overall concept, because it's new, but it's doable. If it's worth it. If we come out and we do the study and it's only worth $200,000, it's not worth it.
Yeah,
When you
like
initially
what you were
suggested
saying
it, it took me a
before,
while to
and I
digest.
don't want to come across as rude or anything, but the Wilbraham doesn't have that great of a reputation of taking care of the buildings in our town, right? So to move the facilities over there, what?
All of our, you go ahead.
It's premature to have any further conversation on this. It may not even pass the finance committee, and the select board may choose to do nothing with it. So I would encourage us not to worry about what may be, and let's wait until something actually concrete happens, and there can be a conversation on it.
Okay.
Okay.
By the way, Herb is working out great for the town. Yeah,
Patrick, can you go into what you were saying before about the $700,000 from E&D that we put towards the budget, about not doing that and putting it towards the stabilization? And can you just get into that a little more?
Are we at time?
We are
We have a hard stop
we are
for
almost at
Hampton?
time, so let's plan to start with that at our next Finance and Operations Subcommittee meeting. But I think your approach is probably gonna be to, if we were gonna do it, we would wanna wean off it. And what we have already here is a wean off, right? Because, you know, we had 1.1 of E&D that went to the budget last year, 700 to the budget this year, maybe only 500 to the budget next year. But who knows? Maybe we're gonna, you know, I mean, we're not in good shape. These numbers aren't very good right now, so.
And we spent a lot of time on the insurance breakout. Does that need to be, I don't want to sound, does that need to be done at this meeting, or can that be done at the school meeting? Because we spent a lot of time on that, and I don't think we care how you break it out in the.
I knew that.
But you know what I mean? That's your decision.
So I think Doug's trying really hard to be transparent. I think he's still trying to make the budget, I imagine he's trying to make the budget his own from what Aaron used to do still. And so, right, would it be a safe summary that the lines are gonna look differently because I'm doing the budget now and Aaron isn't?
Well, there's that, for sure.
And that's a very positive thing, I think, that everybody in the room.
But I think that.
No, but point taken, that something that can be done at the school committee level doesn't need to be discussed here to waste your time.
Just because we spent a lot of time.
Okay,
Understood.
all right. Although we really should, I think at our next meeting, we should start with capital.
Okay.
Okay.
What I will say is what I gave you is not wildly different. There are a few things that I heard. I had some follow-up conversations with some folks today. I was trying to catch up with them before today, but caught up with them today a little bit. So there'll be some things that, you know, come off the list, get shifted as far as funding sources. So, you know, it's clear to me that the ask for each community is higher than either can afford, which we know. You know, if you have a sense of what the target is, then, you know, that would be helpful, but at the same time, we'll start refining that. You know, it'll be a little more refined for Thursday's meeting, quite frankly, because there's a couple things, you know, today that we talked about that will help a little bit, not a ton, but it'll help a little bit, and we'll get, you know, we'll keep moving it forward, and you know, we come to, certainly to you guys in Wilbraham, 11th or 12th, February, I can't recall, and I'm not sure if we've got anything scheduled yet with you in Hampton, but, you know, we'll try to keep refining those and, you know, getting it to.
So I believe Nick is presenting the town budget to the select board on the 2nd, and he's giving that to us on the 4th.
Okay.
So that'll be, I think, what they expect, but we'll make sure that Nick has these numbers as to what they expect / report, and I'll give these numbers to them tomorrow.
Yeah.
And another question on something that might impact this. Michelle, is there any update on union negotiations? Has there been a meeting?
We have a mediation session on Friday, the 23rd.
On Friday, so there has not been, so nothing else has happened. Okay, very good.
And that will change this, hopefully for the better, but we'll see how the negotiations go. But I mean, you know, I made my estimates of what I think it might land at, and so it's you know, there's an assumption about what's currently happening plus what will happen next year. So it's a two-layered, you know, compounding sort of effect. So yeah, if we can get to resolution with our unions, then we can, you know, tighten that up and be much more confident where we are with these numbers, and take that, you know, unknown out of the equation and be more precise even still.
I'd like to thank everyone for their time, and I'm sorry we went over a little bit, but the suggestions and the input, it's very valuable. We have a good group of people here, so. At this
Motion to
point,
adjourn.
yeah,
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Doug, do you have 5 minutes? I've got some questions that I'd like to see.
Mhm.
That are on the audio when you're done. So-
Yeah.